In 1933, Berlin seemed like the portrait of a nation defeated by its own economy. Almost a third of the working-age population was unemployed. In the streets, endless lines formed outside community kitchens in search of a simple bowl of soup. Factories were operating far below capacity, while the state seemed incapable of finding a way out of that crisis. But just 6 years later, the picture had changed completely. On Hitler's birthday, in 1939, unemployment had practically disappeared. In place of the lines of hungry people, columns of tanks, cannons, heavy artillery, fighters, and modern bombers paraded. In less than a decade, an economically suffocated Germany had transformed itself into a military power. But there was one disconcerting detail about this transformation. The country still depended on resources it did not possess in sufficient quantities: oil, rubber, iron ore, and other strategic raw materials. So how did an economy that had hit rock bottom manage to finance such an impressive recovery and at the same time build a war machine? The answer involves a man known for unconventional financial methods, Hjalmar Schacht, an experienced banker who came to be called a true dark wizard of international finance. To understand the method used by Schacht, however, we need to go back a few years, to the period when Germany itself was being rebuilt on the ruins of a war. The German Empire, unified in 1871, had rapidly transformed itself into one of the world's great industrial powers. Capable of challenging British supremacy, Schacht was born precisely in this environment of national ascent. He studied economics at the University of Kiel and built his career in banking until reaching prominent positions. During the First World War, he served as a financial advisor in the occupied areas of Belgium. And it was during that conflict that one of Germany's greatest weaknesses became evident: its dependence on external resources. The Allied naval blockade restricted access to oil, rubber, and minerals. Poor harvests further aggravated the food shortage. And when 1918 arrived, hunger, exhaustion, and military defeat brought about the collapse of the old regime. The Kaiser fell, and upon the ruins of the empire, the Weimar Republic was born. Schacht returned to the banking sector, but he also entered politics. Meanwhile, the young republic inherited two gigantic problems: a colossal war debt and a devastating imbalance in its external accounts, and the worst was yet to come. The Treaty of Versailles had imposed on Germany a combination that was almost impossible to bear. The country had lost important territories, its economic capacity had been weakened, and above all, it had to pay enormous reparations in foreign currency. At the same time, its industry depended precisely on imported raw materials to keep operating. It was a trap. Germany needed to export in order to obtain hard currency, but its exports were weakened. It needed to import to keep industry running, but its gold and foreign currency reserves were rapidly declining. And meanwhile, the government was still carrying debts incurred with its own population during the war. The options seemed terrible: adopt extremely harsh austerity or simply stop paying. The government chose a third path. It expanded the issuance of money. At first, the strategy allowed the state to continue functioning, imports to be financed and reparations to be paid. But there was a hidden price to this solution. The more money was put into circulation, the more confidence in the currency disappeared. Then came 1923. Hyperinflation hit Germany with devastating speed. The value of the currency plummeted. Savings accumulated over years lost practically all their purchasing power. Pensions were destroyed. Entire families watched their reserves disappear before their own eyes. But there was an irony in this tragedy. Despite the monetary chaos, unemployment remained relatively low. The enormous amount of money in circulation stimulated consumption and kept part of economic activity functioning. Inflation had eroded domestic debts, but it had also destroyed something even harder to recover: the population's confidence. It was at this moment that a new government called on Schacht to try to rebuild the economy. He helped introduce a new currency and took part in negotiating a plan that reorganized and temporarily reduced the pressure of reparations. With the reduction of external pressure, the need to continue printing money fell drastically. Inflation was brought under control, and, for a few years, Germany experienced what seemed to be an extraordinary recovery. Foreign investment, mainly from the United States, began flowing into the country. Factories resumed production, credit reappeared, and the so-called Golden Age of the Weimar Republic began. But that recovery concealed a dangerous weakness. The German economy was becoming increasingly dependent on foreign loans. As long as foreign money continued to arrive, the system seemed to work. But all it took was a rupture in the international situation for everything to begin collapsing again. And that rupture would come in 1929. When the New York Stock Exchange collapsed, international credit dried up almost suddenly. At the same time, the United States and the United Kingdom adopted protectionist measures that made German exports even more difficult. Germany was once again facing the same problem: little foreign currency, few exports, and an enormous need to import. Only this time, printing money was no longer a politically acceptable option, and it was precisely at this moment of desperation that the economic crisis began to make room for an even more radical political transformation. The only way to reduce imports was to reduce the purchasing power of the population itself. And that was exactly what happened. Cuts in public spending and tax increases deepened the recession. Unemployment exploded. The lines outside community kitchens began to grow again. And while thousands of families struggled to survive, political radicalism found the perfect ground to advance. Communists and Nazis promised to completely break with that system that seemed to have failed. Schacht, increasingly frustrated with the issue of reparations, moved closer to the nationalist camp and began appearing alongside Hitler at demonstrations against the Weimar government. In 1932, a new renegotiation drastically reduced reparations, and small signs of recovery emerged. Foreign correspondents began to notice a discreet easing in the economy, but politics had already reached a point of no return. The Nazis became the largest party in the country, and in 1933, Adolf Hitler took power. Schacht was once again called upon to lead economic policy. Now the challenge was enormous. It was necessary to reduce unemployment, finance a huge rearmament program, and at the same time, prevent Germany from plunging back into a foreign exchange crisis. The problem was that the country still imported more than it exported. Foreign currency reserves remained limited, and there were also private obligations to international creditors. The solution began with a strong expansion of public spending. Like Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal in the United States, the German government began stimulating the economy through debt-financed investments. But there was a fundamental difference. After 1933, an increasing share of these resources was directed toward the military sector, and there was an additional problem. Rearmament violated the restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. Therefore, it was necessary to find a way to finance military production without making everything immediately obvious. That was when Schacht created an ingenious mechanism. A fictitious company called MEFO began ordering armaments and paying manufacturers, using securities known as MEFO bills. In practice, these documents represented a form of public debt. Disguised as a private transaction, the system made it possible to accelerate military production without immediately causing an inflationary explosion, and there was room for it. Factories were still underutilized. Millions of people remained unemployed. The economy had enough idle capacity to absorb a huge expansion of activity. The result was impressive. Unemployment began to plummet, but precisely when it seemed that the solution had been found, a new danger emerged. As the economy approached full employment, Available resources began to become scarcer, and when idle capacity disappears, each new expansion begins to put pressure on prices. How could inflation be prevented from returning? The regime responded by increasingly controlling the economy. Independent trade unions were eliminated and replaced by the German Labour Front. Wages came under heavy control. While administrative measures began to limit price increases, growth continued. But the cost was evident: less economic freedom, pressured wages, and a growing shortage of goods intended for civilian consumption. And this was only the beginning. Because, while unemployment was practically disappearing, Germany's real problem remained hidden behind the positive numbers. It still did not possess enough resources to sustain the economic and military machine it was building. Even with unemployment practically eliminated and industrial production growing rapidly, the fundamental fragility remained intact. Germany did not possess enough foreign currency to sustain its expansion. Oil, rubber, iron ore, and other strategic materials had to come from abroad. And the more the economy grew, the greater the need for these resources. Schacht tried to solve the problem by directly attacking foreign debts. In 1934, he suspended a significant portion of payments to foreign creditors. It was a selective default, calculated to preserve reserves at a time when international credit was practically closed. But the measure provoked trade retaliation. Then came bilateral agreements, clearing systems, and strict exchange controls. Companies could no longer simply purchase foreign currency to import whatever they wanted. Every transaction had to pass through state control. Sectors considered strategic received priority, while others were restricted. Foreign trade was no longer merely a business matter. Now, it was a tool of state policy. At the same time, Germany needed to maintain its exports. As other powers had devalued their currencies, German products became relatively expensive. Instead of devaluing its own currency and risking reigniting inflation, the government began subsidizing exporters and expanded clearing agreements with countries in Eastern Europe and Latin America. In practice, Germany exchanged industrial products for raw materials, using systems that reduced the need for dollars and pounds. But there was an even darker aspect to this process. As the anti-Semitic persecution intensified, thousands of Jews began trying to leave the country. The government feared that the transfer of their assets abroad would cause an even greater flight of reserves. Therefore, it imposed severe restrictions on the movement of capital. Little by little, the German economy moved completely away from a free market model. Wages were controlled, prices were administered, imports were monitored, capital was restricted. Resources were allocated according to priorities defined by the state. And then, in 1935, rearmament was officially announced. Germany was no longer hiding its intention to rebuild its military forces. But now a problem emerged that no financial mechanism could solve on its own. The lack of material resources. The country was close to full employment. Factories were operating at an accelerated pace. However, there was not enough oil, rubber, or other inputs to indefinitely sustain an economy geared toward war. In 1936, Hitler launched the four-year plan, with the ambition of preparing Germany for total war in just 4 years and reducing its dependence on foreign countries through synthetic fuels, artificial rubber, and import substitution. At this point, the relationship between Hitler and Schacht began to deteriorate. Schacht saw financial and material limits. Hitler wanted speed. For the banker, the economy needed caution. For the dictator, every delay meant losing an opportunity to foreign rivals. His influence declined. In 1937, Schacht left the Ministry of Economics and shortly afterward would also lose his position at the head of the Reichsbank. The way was open for an even more aggressive economic policy. Austria would be annexed in 1938, bringing new reserves and mineral resources into the German system. At the same time, pressure on the countries of Eastern Europe increased. securing raw materials on terms favorable to Germany. When Hitler celebrated his birthday in 1939 in front of tanks, artillery and modern squadrons, that display of strength had not appeared out of nowhere. It was the result of years of debt, foreign exchange controls, financial manipulation, state direction, and the sacrifice of civilian consumption. The system had achieved something extraordinary, transforming an economy devastated by unemployment into a powerful industrial and military machine. But one question remained unanswered. How long could this system survive without territorial expansion that would bring in new resources? The answer would be given by the war itself. Schacht, removed from the center of power, would remain connected to the regime for some time. In 1944, after suspicions related to conspiracies against Hitler, he was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to a concentration camp. He survived the conflict and, after the war, was tried and acquitted of the main charges at the International Tribunal. But the economic structure he had helped build would remain in the hands of other leaders. During the war, controls would be expanded. Conquered resources would be exploited, and forced labor would be used on an increasing scale to fuel military production. In the end, Germany's great economic transformation was not simply a story of recovery. It was the story of an economy that emerged from mass unemployment through a combination of debt, state control, rearmament, and the forced mobilization of resources. And perhaps that is the most striking part of all. The same system that managed to eliminate unemployment and transform paralyzed factories into centers of military production also created an economy increasingly dependent on expansion and war. If you made it this far, thank you for following this entire story. If this content brought a new perspective on this period, consider subscribing to the channel and supporting the project. Your audience helps keep this work alive. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.